Welcome back for the very last Artober TV segment to celebrate National Arts and Humanities Month. This week we are highlighting local artists and celebrating inclusion. Join us later in the segment with Winifred Forrester, author of A Mind in Motion, The Art of Charles H. Forrester, who we featured in an author talk on October 1st. We'll also preview her upcoming documentary. Then we'll talk with this year's featured artist, Omari Booker. We'll talk about his life as an artist and his process, so stick around to learn all about Omari.
Artober Learning Labs!
This week, we'll be featuring 2 learning labs. On Tuesday at 10:15 a.m., join the Hiram Van Gordon Gallery at TSU to learn about the history and heritage of Tennessee State University, its award-winning athletes, and everything surrounding homecoming. I'm so glad. On Thursday at 10:15 a.m., we'll learn all about El Dia de los Muertos from Cheekwood's education team. Also joining Cheekwood's education team will be Alma Paz San Miguel from Vanderbilt Center for Latin American Studies and local performer Rachel Rodriguez. Now for 10 things to do this week. So today I'm here with Winifred Forrester. She is the daughter of sculptor Charles Forrester. Thank you, Winifred, for being here.
Thank you, Erin.
So tell me about your dad, Charles Forrester.
Sure. My father taught sculpture at Western Kentucky University for over 25 years, and he lived in East Nashville for 12 years, where he passed away in 2010. But his roots started in New York City and the Pacific Northwest, where he got his education. So he grew up in New York and was born in 1928. He had a difficult childhood, like many families did during the Great Depression. His mother, my grandmother, suffered from mental illness and was committed to an institution when he was only 2 years old. So he had an older sister, 10 years older than him, who basically raised him. And he met my mother, Dorothy Reese, in New York in 1950. And she had graduated from Barnard College with a full scholarship and had already been around the world. And she was such an integral part of his success that I can't talk about my father without mentioning her. And she was his muse, his ghostwriter, agent, publicist. Their marriage lasted 53 years until she died. So she was the one who encouraged him to go back to college. And they moved to Seattle so he could attend the University of Washington. And he ultimately received his Master of Fine Arts at the University of Oregon. So they lived a very bohemian style of life. And our family lived on a boat for several years. We spent the summers living in a lookout fire station in the Northwest Forest. And we traveled extensively all over Europe and England. And my dad found a lot of his creativity by living in foreign countries where he couldn't speak the language, but my mother did, and with all the historic architecture and buildings.
That's amazing. It's very cool that you got to live on a boat. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. I was just a baby, so I don't remember that part really well.
Yeah, but that's it. That's amazing life. Like, I love that bohemian lifestyle. That's kind of, I think everyone's dream these days is to kind of travel the world and live a minimalist life, So, um, tell me about how your dad got into sculpting and what type of sculpting.
Sure. So originally, when he started the University of Washington, he had planned to become an engineer. And along the way, he started taking some art courses and was influenced greatly by Everett DePen, the sculptor instructor there. And as it turned out with his sculptures, he got to use his engineering skills extensively. And I love to quote my friend and Russ Faxon, who was one of my father's best students. He lives here in Middle Tennessee in Bell Buckle, but he loves to say, he never knew if my dad was an engineer stuck in a sculptor's body or a sculptor stuck in an engineer's mind, but they always intermingled. And that was just perfect way to describe my dad. So my father was an expert at many mediums and styles. And when you look at his work as a whole, it's really evident. He loved the human figure, and he was certainly proficient at creating realistic portrait busts or commissions, but he most often created abstract figurative forms. So in his early years, he constructed very large outdoor concrete sculptures, which still can be seen across the country. And he was always fascinated by Buckminster Fuller's geodesic domes. And he spent years making kinetic sphere sculptures and welded steel structures. But once he started working at Western Kentucky University, where he had a foundry, he started making a lot more smaller bronze and aluminum pieces. So in his later years, he used a laminated plywood technique that is extremely labor intensive, but results in really beautiful sculptures. So it was definitely a progression.
Yeah, well, I think artists kind of, as I've seen, over time, they adapt and change and learn something new and, to create or use a new process.
Right.
So, what's one of your favorite pieces?
Yes, that's a hard one. I think if I had to just pick one, which you asked me, I would pick the figurehead, which is on the front cover of the art book. And so that sculpture is actually a fairly large sculpture. It's about 28 inches long and about 15 inches high. It's cast aluminum. It shows, it's abstract. It shows the ribs of a boat-like structure. And then it's got a startling form of a Barbie doll on the front as the figurehead. And so all of this is put together with a gorgeous green 1-inch slab of marble, which adds to the ocean effect of the overall piece. It is truly a sensational piece.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best.
I've seen that one. So that one's on the front of the book, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that why you chose that for the cover?
Well, I think it was probably, I put it on the front of the book because I liked it so much. But yeah, I mean, it's a really a good representation of what he was capable of doing.
So speaking of your book, which is called A Mind in Motion, The Art of Charles Forrester, tell me about it. What can people expect from this book?
Sure, it's an art book. It's got over 80 images of some of his best work. He actually did over 550 pieces of sculpture in his lifetime, so we picked what we felt were the best ones. And there's a commentary from art historians and some contemporary artists, and I wrote a biography. And it looked great on somebody's coffee table.
Wonderful. So for collectors here in Nashville that might have known his work, it would be like the perfect thing to put in your Airbnb coffee table or in your home so people can just kind of flip through while you're having wine night. Is that what you kind of envision?
Well, certainly. Absolutely.
Winifred actually joined us on Artober 1st for an author talk that some folks might have missed. So will you tell us more about where people can grab a copy of the book here locally in Nashville?
Sure. Of course, it's available on all your usual online booksellers, but you can certainly request it at your favorite local bookstore, wherever that might be.
Wonderful. So you can check out the retailers on the website, which is
www.charlesforrester.com.
Wonderful. So in addition to the book, Winifred has produced a short documentary that's premiering this fall. And I know it's airing in Kentucky right now, but tell us about that documentary just a little bit. I'm going to show a clip after this so people can see the documentary.
So the documentary is about 30 minutes long. It's a companion film to the book. And it's won an award for Best Inspirational Film at the Top Shorts Film Festival. And in November, it will be shown at the Louisville Film Festival. And so it will premiere on PBS in Kentucky next month. But we certainly hope to bring it to Tennessee after that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Winifred, for being a part of this Artober TV segment. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you very much. Having a conversation with my father, it was a mind-opening experience. He viewed the world differently. I mean, if you'd just be driving down the road and he looked out the window and you looked out the window, he saw something different.
With his influence and seeing what he did, how he did it, you become intimate with your idea and how you want to express it.
Some artists find a particular trope that works for them, and they exhaust that trope. Chuck Forrester had a more expansive, restless approach to making work. I see architectural studies, portraiture, abstraction, assemblage, postmodernism.
Everything he did and everywhere he looked, he was looking for ideas about sculpture and art. He lived, breathed, and thought about making artwork all the time. My father enjoyed teaching.
I could see Chuck's influence on the sculpture students today, even though they may have never heard it.
I didn't know Charles Forrester face to face, but as artists, we're connected almost through an unbroken line. So I know him. I just never met him.
For the people that don't know Chuck Forrester and what he could do, I think that'll come around. It may be a few years, but his name will come up.
My name is Omari Booker, and I am the Artober artist for 2020. Yeah, Blueprint 2 came from a series of work that I was working on around my life story. So I was telling my life story through Jay-Z's 13 albums. A huge hip-hop fan, bunch of records and stuff will kind of tell that story, but I started off with Reasonable Doubt, which was Jay-Z's first album in 1996. I was 16 years old, and it goes up until 444, which came out about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So his work has kind of spanned my life. And Blueprint 2 is a portrait of my big sister, who passed away in 2002, and was just one of those blueprints. So Blueprint, the first Blueprint's my mom, Blueprint 2 is my sister, Blueprint 3 is a portrait of myself and my grandmother, and that's one of the pieces that's in the Need a Hug exhibit. I try to respond to the environment around me. I mean, Blueprint 2 is really unique because I didn't have my traditional media that I work with. So I wasn't at home in my studio where we are today. I was visiting my mom in Florida, and she had a crate that a mirror got shipped to her house. So like a 4 by 5 foot roughly crate, which is basically just a wood panel, and I didn't have the oil paint that I usually use, so I used acrylic paint from I think the local Home Depot or Lowe's. It was ultra premium, so it's good quality, but it's a different. I think the process often depends on what's available, and that's something that I think is really important for art and for artists to understand, is that whatever you have available to you is what you can make art out of. You don't have to have a fancy studio or the best paint or the best brushes. You know, if you're in the world, you've got some stuff that can make something. So yeah, I use oil on canvas or oil on panel, and also mixed media. So a lot of the you'll kind of find fabric or razor wire there. I use house wrap sometimes, which is just kind of like the industrial installation that wraps houses. I've used pill bottles. I kind of can look around. My college graduation gown is in a piece. So yeah, kind of anything that can enhance the story. So I try to think about what I'm trying to tell with the artwork, and what materials that are somewhat non-traditional that can help tell that story. I think because music is such a huge influence. I mean, hip hop music has been a really kind of fundamental thing that I've drawn a lot of inspiration from. My own personal experience with the criminal justice system has given me probably a deeper understanding, because I lived it, of things like mass incarceration and just extended sentencing, all of the stuff that I might not have been as locked into had I not experienced some of it. But I do think that the work organically has come to some common threads, even if they're not overt. Where it's like the series that I'm kind of working on now, which is called Need a Hug, might not seem as tied to justice issues, but a lot of what it is humanizing people, and that is a justice issue, because if we don't kind of start treating people like human beings, then things like all the police killings will continue to happen, because those happen because someone is seeing someone else as not humans. Yeah, I'd say value people. Value people would be the thing. Like, make people the thing that are important. And I think that can get lost even in social justice work when you start getting into policy and law reform and funding and all the stuff. But to strip all of that back and realize, we're doing this for each other. We're not doing this to make more money. We're not doing this to drive a better car, or for a pat on the back. Like, the reality is that if everything else is stripped away, we've got us, and if we make that the forefront of what we're doing, then we'll be fine. Our society will keep on clicking along with its problems, as is always going to happen, because we're human. But yeah, make people the focus, and that's my message. For more information, you can come find me at omaribooker.com. Also, Omari Booker on Instagram or Facebook.
We hope you all have learned something new about organizations, artists, history, the arts, but most importantly, inclusion. I'm going to leave you all with this quote from Marco Bizzarri. Diversity and inclusion, which are the real grounds for creativity, must remain at the center of what we do. Thanks for joining us this year for a unique Artober Nashville experience, and we'll see you all next year on Artober TV.